So good afternoon, everybody. I am Chris with The Connection. I'm here with a couple of professors, and we're going to talk about the Emmys. So I'll start ladies first, of course. Professor Wagner, if you can introduce yourself.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Professor Lauren Wagner. I am a professor and the department chair for radio, television, and film production. And I worked in TV for a number of years, and I've also worked in film production. So we can not that I worked on any of these shows, but I have friends that have worked on some of these shows, so we can talk about that.
And my name is Adam Wadenius. I'm the assistant professor of film and media studies, and I teach primarily film, but I also do media and television studies as well.
Perfect. So we're going to start off kind of fun. I wanted to start with comedy series. We'll start with just the series in general, and we'll kind of get into acting after that. So real quickly, a recap for you guys. We have Curb Your Enthusiasm from HBO, which is, of course, no stranger to the Emmys. We have Dead to Me from Netflix. We have a newcomer. We have Insecure from HBO, Issa Rae's show. We have Schitt's Creek. We have The Good Place coming back for a second time. We have another Netflix show in the Kaminsky Method. And then definitely not a newcomer here. We have The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel from Amazon Prime. And then another newcomer from FX. We have What We Do in the Shadows. So I just want to ask either of you if you had a favorite or any input on that category there. If you have something that you think Hollywood's going to kind of push up to the top, what do you guys think?
I love Schitt's Creek so much. Like, I love that show, and it's going off the air, and I cried at the season finale. So I mean, that's my sentimental favorite. I'm pulling for that one. I just loved that show. So that's what I'm gonna pull for. And I don't know that Hollywood will feel the same way. I don't know if there's a border situation because it's a Canadian show, or if they'll be swept away with the
There was a lot of discussion about that one too, though, with respect to it being its final season, right? If I'm not mistaken. And the same thing with The Good Place. Both of those shows in their final season, both of them kind of being favorites in that respect, where you give a show its kind of credit at the end of its run, kind of a thing. And I like The Good Place. I haven't seen all of Schitt's Creek. I love the cast of Schitt's Creek, and I'm kind of making my way through it. But when The Good Place was on, that was always my first go-to when I was going through my DVR at the end of the week. That one and Brockmire. Brockmire was another great show. It's not nominated, but it was another great show this year that I really, really liked a lot. By the way, it did utilize sports and kind of as a commentary on the world, and also just a really great, funny kind of a character. But I don't think it'll win, but I like The Good Place for this one.
Perfect. So we'll go into the ladies now. We're going to talk about lead actress in this category. So a lot of course, the shows we just mentioned, but one that's not nominated for comedy series, we have Tracee Ellis Ross from Blackish. Then we get into the shows that are nominated. We have Christina Applegate and Linda Cardellini from Dead to Me on Netflix. Of course, Issa Rae from Insecure, Catherine O'Hara in Schitt's Creek, and then Rachel Brosnahan in The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Are there any performances that stuck out to you guys in those categories?
Well, I love Catherine O'Hara also for just for the totality of her career and all the films and going all the way back to SCTV. But I also really like Tracee Ellis Ross in Blackish. I don't know, like, I just love her. So I like both. Those are the ones that I'm most familiar with their performances. But strong category, like it could go any way. I'm happy for any of them.
Right, and there's a lot of women in this category who have been in television for long periods of time, and there's a worthiness to all of them to a certain degree in terms of their careers and what they put together. But yeah, Christina Applegate is really good. I haven't watched a lot of Dead to Me, but I hear a lot of great things about that one. And of course, I don't think you can go wrong with somebody like Catherine O'Hara. She's just one of those actresses where every time you see her, you're happy to see her in whatever it is she's in, and you know that you're going to get not just a strong performance, but she's somebody who's going to deliver it in a way where it's her, but it's also her interpretation of the character, and it's always funny. I mean, I can't not look at her face and just start to giggle a little bit with what goes on with her. Yeah.
Perfect. So we're getting to the men now. This one, it's kind of shaken up a bit, and I enjoy it. So we have Don Cheadle from Black Monday, Anthony Anderson from Blackish, Rami Youssef from Rami, Eugene Levy in Schitt's Creek, Ted Danson nominated for the third time in The Good Place, and then Michael Douglas from The Kaminsky Method. Adam, I'll have you start this one off. How do you feel?
Another one with a bunch of hard hitters, and again, I'm more partial to the Good Place perhaps because it was one of my favorite TV shows from over the last couple of years, and one of the things that Ted Danson does in that TV show too is that he plays somebody who's not a human being, and there's this little thing that he does throughout the course of the show where he's kind of constantly amazed with the littlest human things, and it works. He's able to really nuance that performance to be this kind of alien figure who is trying to figure out humanity, and through that is this wonderful critique of American society. And so I love that performance, but like I said too, the actors in this category are hard hitters: Anthony Anderson, Michael Douglas, Don Cheadle. I mean, these are similar to the women's category. These are figures who've been around for a long time and give great performances. And so I'm partial to Ted Danson in this one, but it can go a lot of ways with this category,
especially in the last season for The Good Place.
Well, you're totally making me feel like I need to put Good List on my list. I have some friends that are really into it. So now I'm like, oh, you guys, I have so many series now between what my students have been talking about. But you do have good taste in this stuff, Adam. So that might end up on my list as well of things that I really, really, really have to watch. Yeah, this isn't like, I love Don Cheadle. I love him. Anthony, I'm a fan of Blackish anyways, so I think that Anthony Anderson does a great job. Ted Danson, again, he has been on television since like my childhood. I used to watch him in Cheers. I watched it when CSI went and decided he should be a person on CSI. So I mean, he's been around forever. Kirk Douglas, I mean, same thing. I'm going to stick with Schitt's Creek. I love Eugene Levy, but I think that anybody in this category, and I think this might be one where the Academy sometimes does this, where they might split it. So they might look to a series, and one series might get something, and then they might look to performance. So, it might be that, Good Place might get best series, but maybe Levy gets best actor, or flip it, so we'll see what happens. But man, there's so much talent, and this is something else that's happened in, I'd say maybe like the last 15 years, maybe it's been longer, maybe it's been like 20 years, but there are more people that kind of made their careers in film in previous iterations, that then migrated to television. And then, I mean, like, even if you're just sitting at home, like, I'll be watching like a Lowe's commercial and I'm like, is that Gene Hackman doing the voiceover for Lowe's right now? Like, what is going on? So it's really just shaking up the business that you have, like, powerhouses that have been in television forever. I mean, for forever for me. So, you know what I mean? Like, they're still in the game. And then you also have like Don Cheadle, who I knew from film before he went into television, Kirk Douglas, please, before he came into television. So it's really interesting to see kind of the crossover for where people's careers are going, and that people are landing on series and liking that, oh, we could do this for years. This is so nice. Versus like, we'll do a movie and then we'll see what happens, and then wait for the phone to ring. So,
and it makes perfect sense too, because as a performer, I'd much rather attach myself to a television show, because instead of doing, working for however many months it is, 10 months or so on a major motion picture, right? And then you do the grind for half a year doing the publicity and everything. With a television show, you can get yourself a nice, good role. You can start to add more nuance to your performance and developing the character. You get more money, obviously, which is what all of this is about. That's why we're talking about the award show. The awards don't exist. They only exist, of course, to make more money. So you can say, hey, I produced an Emmy award-winning show, and it becomes credit. But the other thing being that as a performer, I'd much rather do 5 seasons of a show, get paid for all of that, have this body of work, and be working for 5 years, right? Instead of just working for. And the other thing too, which comes along, which we're kind of talking about with each answer, is more and more over the course of the kind of coinciding with this boom of film actors moving into television, is we've become much more aware of the politics of award shows like this, and so we have to start talking about different kinds of difference in how they're represented in these shows, and how this is also taken into account with respect to awards and how awards are given out, because this is the space we're living in now, where it's not just the performances too, it also becomes this kind of political space where we're talking about the representation. We're also talking about, you know, the who's voting for what shows and all these kinds of things that are kind of behind the scenes that a lot of people don't necessarily think about with the glitz and glamour of something like the Emmys.
Absolutely. And that's a great segue because we're going to get into drama now. And this year is kind of important, I feel like, in drama because it's the first year in a while without Game of Thrones, which kind of swept everything last year, which I know was their last season, so it kind of made sense. So yeah, we'll get into drama series real fast, and I'll give you guys a quick recap what's going on. So this year we have Better Call Saul from AMC. We have Killing Eve making a return from BBC America. Netflix kind of takes the lead here with Ozark, Stranger Things, and The Crown. Then we also have Succession from HBO. Of course, The Handmaid's Tale from Hulu making a return. And then kind of a surprise pick for a lot of people, The Mandalorian from Disney Plus made its way into Best Drama. Professor Wagner, is there anything you've seen in there that is kind of your favorite or maybe something you've heard
Well,
from your friends?
Stranger Things is the one that I've seen every single thing of up to this point. So, you know, out of that category, that's the one I could talk the most about. But I think that there's a, I mean, there's, you know, there's a lot of different ways this could go. So I don't know. I mean, I've heard, of course, I mean, they're all nominated, so of course they all have good buzz, but I've heard good things about every single one of those, which is just adding to the list of just thousands of hours that I'm going to have to spend. My students got me into Breaking Bad. I binged that one summer. I got through like the whole series. So the characters and, you know, Better Call Saul, while I didn't transition into that series, you know, I feel the energy of that. So I don't have a pick on this one. I just think that it's going to be very interesting, as Professor Wadenius was saying, to see, because these are, the votes aren't just purely, because it can't be anyways, it's art, right? Like you can't just purely go, well, you're the better actor because, but there's so much, and who's the character, and you know, what's going on, and I know you as a person, so I know that you're really playing a very different character. And so same thing with like who puts the series together and what happens with it. So I don't know.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, Better Call Saul is hands down the best TV show. I'm in the middle of Ozark right now. I'm through The Mandalorian too. The Mandalorian is really great. Actually, it kind of took me by surprise in the same way that it's taking the awards by surprise. But with and Ozark has really gripped me. That's one of those shows where you just kind of start watching it and you binge it over the course of a few days. But I mean, Better Call Saul, to me, Better Call Saul is much better than Breaking Bad. I like it a whole lot better than that show. And Breaking Bad was one of my all-time favorites. And so I love the actress who plays Kim Wexler. I think that she got robbed of a nomination. She did a wonderful performance throughout the course of this current season. And I just think it hits on all levels. I think it's a really great show for our times in terms of themes of class warfare and kind of rooting for the little guy, and you know, somebody who breaks the rules but is kind of doing it with good purpose. You know, it's got all of these really interesting themes that are mixing about in it. But I'm also just kind of concerned with the lack of kind of straightforward pop culture TV shows, because you don't see nowadays, you know, TV shows like Blind Spot or The Blacklist, for example, which are really good contemporary dramas in the sense that they cater to a lot of people, and they're kind of just big dumb, kind of like big dumb Hollywood movies. They're big dumb TV shows. But you know, underneath those shows are some really subversive commentary, especially in a show like The Blacklist. And so I'm kind of dissatisfied with, you know, how the awards have kind of gone towards this level where some of the show in years past, you're kind of used to maybe some of those, you know, TV shows like just middle of the road kind of pop culture shows, if you will. And
PR, this year, NYPD Blue, Law and Order, same stuff every year. Yeah,
absolutely. Because, and one of the things too that's starting to happen, and that happens with the award shows in general, but this notion that there's a certain standard of TV show that you have to hit, right? That you have to, that the show has to have some sort of greater import or larger message that it's attempting to do. And in TV shows like The Blacklist, that's not necessarily the case. They're just trying to put together, you know, dumb procedural shows, but they end up having great import on, or kind of great messages about society and so forth. And so, yeah, those have been some of the better shows that I thought were left out, that I think maybe should have gotten a nod, but I understand why. I mean, TV shows like Ozark, Better Call Saul, The Crown, The Handmaid's Tale, these are feats of television engineering, so to speak. So that's why they get nominated every year, right? They found out what people like. And
and just seeing where the business has gone anyways, that it's right. And I remember this as a kid. I mean, I wasn't even in the business yet. I was still as a kid. And it was like, as HBO, that was a debate. Do we include HBO? Do we include cable? Because not everyone in America has HBO. Not everyone subscribes to Hulu. Not everyone. So, you know, what does that do then in terms of, you know, the democratization of our entertainment, in that, you know, if you're just watching whatever's on TV or basic cable, you don't have access to this. If you've cut the cord, you're not seeing anything that's on TV until it gets to a Netflix or until it's streaming somewhere else. And so, you know, what's that doing in terms of both the business and then also, you know, where the pop culture references are coming from, and, you know, what we are talking about, and then what gets kind of pushed to the side. So.
And there are so many networks now, right? There's so many different networks on not just, you know, your cable box, but then you go to your Amazon, you got Hulu, Netflix, those kinds of things. But then also, I mean, I have a Roku TV, and, you know, Roku has its own little mini channels. There are people who on Roku, there's a big debate too in television studies now about, you know, Roku channels and how you can set up your own independent channel, and people are playing, you know, all sorts of hateful content on different channels and things of that nature. So in the same way that with movies, you know, independent productions mean that it becomes impossible for us to see all the movies that come out every year. I mean, television is so much more stuff. I mean, I click on Amazon or on my Netflix account every couple of weeks or whatever it is when new stuff comes in. And I mean, there's, you know, so many different TV shows, so much stuff to choose from. Yeah, it becomes this. So at a certain point too, people start to rely, they start to go back and, well, The Crown, like you said earlier with something like Game of Thrones, right? This year, Game of Thrones isn't in there. It became easy to just kind of stuff Game of Thrones in there every year for 7 years, however it was.
Yeah. So perfect. We're gonna go and lead. Thank you for making those points, though. I mean, it's not like shows like Blacklist or, you know, Grey's Anatomy and those kind of like standard TV shows we've been accustomed to. It's not like they're going anywhere. You know, they're still very prominent in our culture.
Absolutely.
But so actors, we're getting into actors with a lot of these shows. I want to start with Billy Porter from Pose. I know, Professor Wagner, you were talking about that earlier. We also have Jason Bateman in Ozark, Brian Cox and Jeremy Strong from Succession. We have Steve Carell in TV from The Morning Show, and then Sterling K. Brown, of course, in This Is Us, making his return. Professor Wagner, talk to me about Billy Porter.
I love Billy Porter in Pose, and I only got into it because I honestly, like, I kept watching him on the red carpet, and I'm like, why don't I know who this person is? Why am I not watching this show? And so I started watching it like right before classes started, and so I kind of have. It's a heavy show, so that's not one that you can take a lot of it all at once. You gotta take a breather in between episodes. But yeah, oh my God, he is fantastic. So I'm just gonna sing his praises. He is fantastic. No disrespect to anyone else in the category, but oh my God, he is great.
Yeah, that's the reaction I have, especially because when I watched the first episode of Pose, I mean, the ever so often, I watch a TV show and I go, wow, that's right on the syllabus for my TV class. And that's what it was with the first episode of Pose. Like, blew my mind, hit all the themes, but also is structured and carried out narratively in a way that just really suits my aesthetic in terms of dance and music and those kinds of things. And so, yeah, I mean, as you said, all due respect, individuals like Jason Bateman, Sterling K. Brown, who are just magnificent and give great performances, but, the soft spot and just the idea of Billy Pose and just even thinking about his performance. And I mean, just it brings up all those emotions. I mean, it's a rare thing, that show. That's a great show.
Yeah. And I was saying before we started too, that as I'm watching, I was like, oh my God, this is so good. And then I'm watching, and I'm like, my friend directed this episode. So I'm like getting a hold of her. I'm like, oh my God, why are you so much more amazing than I thought? Oh my God, exactly. Like you're the best. Oh my God. So yeah, it's such a good show.
I love that we have a consensus there. That's
yeah.
So getting into actresses, we have our reigning champ, Jodie Comer from Killing Eve, and Sandra Oh nominated as well for the third time in that same show. We have Laura Linney in Ozark, Olivia Colman from The Crown, Jennifer Aniston from The Morning Show, and then kind of from what I've read online, and kind of the surprise pick here was Zendaya for her role in Euphoria on HBO. Professor Wadenius, do you have any thoughts on kind of things going on there?
In the same way that I look at Catherine O'Hara and just in awe and in love to a certain degree when I see a show with her in it. Laura Linney. I mean, Laura Linney to me is just ever since I saw her in you can count on me. I think it was a Kenneth Lonergan film all the way back in the mid 2000s, I think it was. You look at her face, and the words that come to mind are sunny, bright, happy. I think she's gifted. She's in one of my favorite shows, The Truman Show. But her performance in Ozark that she's giving, it's one of the reasons I love it is because all of those things that come to mind, the performance is the exact opposite. And she nails it all the way through. I've always been a big fan of hers, so whenever I see her name in something, I'm drawn immediately to it. And so I think that the stuff with the secession stuff might. That's for the supporting actress. I was going to say the secession stuff would kind of cancel itself out, but I'm seeing that's now supporting actress. But some of the other actresses in this category are great. Sandra Oh, Jennifer Aniston, but for me, it's Laura Linney all the way, just because of that soft spot for her.
I love Laura Linney too.
Right.
I just love her. She has such range, and she's fantastic. But I'm also I didn't grow up on Friends, but Friends, so I do also really like Jennifer Aniston, Sandra Oh. I love her as well. But I'm also a Laura Linney fan.
Perfect. So Professor Wagner, I know you got to head out of here soon.
Yep.
Just to let you know, whatever you got to go, that's okay.
Okay.
I have your picks for this next category.
Oh, okay.
So no sweat. But we're gonna go and move into limited series and TV movies real fast here, Adam. So I want to start with the actresses in this one here. So we have Kerry Washington in Little Fires Everywhere. This is a very stacked category, I feel. Kate Blanchett from Mrs. America. Octavia Spencer in Self-Made, inspired by the life of C.J. Walker. Shira Haas in Unorthodox, and Regina King in Watchmen from HBO. So I'll start with you, Professor Wadenius. Was there anything that stood out to you, or any thoughts?
I've only seen some of the highlight clips from these performances because I didn't get a chance to check on any of these limited series. But just engaging from some of that, and just kind of also thinking about my preferences and things of that nature. I love Regina King. I think that I'm really happy to see Watchmen in this particular category, just because of again, that notion of kind of more pop culture centered stuff. And I think that Watchmen is where we're at right now. I mean, in movies and television right now, we're at a space in America where it seems as if there's no hope. And so what do you do when there's no hope, right? Superheroes come along and they save the day. And this is where a lot of our, shows like The Mandalorian and that kind of a thing. So, I mean, it's always been that way with respect to film and television, but right now we're really heavily in that kind of a space, and have been for a long period of time, I think, because we're trying to look to somebody to save the world. And right now it's not our leaders. And so we have to kind of rely on superheroes and things of that nature. So we'll go there for that category. Just seeing that TV show's in that, with that, I'm kind of happy about that. So.
Yeah, before we met, I was giving my pre-picks in case I have to go, which I will go right after this. But I was super non-committal on this category because I'm like, everyone is so amazing. Like, we have Academy Award winners and you know what I mean? Like, come on. But I think it might be Regina King for everything that Professor Wadenius was just saying, that this would be a place where, in a multitude of ways, so it wouldn't just have to be Regina King, but in a multitude of ways, it would be a way for the Television Academy to make a statement and to get a speech on stage during prime time. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's moments where you just know, like, oh, well, here, Sean Penn joked about it when he won the Academy Award several years ago. He was like, here comes the speech. Like, you guys knew if I won, I was going to be making a big speech. So I think that, that for where we are in 2020, that might be the thing. Okay, with that, I have to go. I'm intrigued to watch what Professor Wadenius says for the rest of this category.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
We'll talk to you soon. So, Adam, Professor Wadenius, we'll finish up here with just actor and actress here.
Well, and can I just say that?
Oh, please.
As she makes that point, it's an important one, and it kind of goes back to the notion how we discussed the idea of politics and the import of that. But also this notion with the speeches. I heard a detail that they had to pre-record all of the acceptance speeches because of the broadcast issues not going out in the kind of way that it was supposed to, with the gathering and the swag bags and all that kind of stuff. And so pre-recording speeches for something like this is interesting because of if the network now has a pre-recorded speech, the network is going to be able to control speech times, right? Because one of the things that happens when you get on stage is the music tries to play you off, but you see it all the time when people say, stop the music, I got something to say. Or if somebody goes on a really poignant kind of discussion or point of discussion, they let it go for a little bit. And so it's going to be interesting to see how much of that will take place, whether or not they're going to let all the pre-recorded speeches go, whether or not they're going to cut or edit them, and how that's going to make an impact on the show in terms of winners and losers, things of that nature.
That's a great point. And I'm not sure if you know when they recorded those. There might be events that take place. I know we're only 2 days away now, but if they recorded a few weeks ago, there might be something they wanted to include.
Right. Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
a very important point. So we'll get into lead actor for limited series and TV movies. So we have Hugh Jackman in the HBO movie Bad Education, Jeremy Pope in Hollywood, Mark Ruffalo for his dual role, and I Know This Much Is True, Paul Mescal from Normal People, and Jeremy Irons in Watchmen.
I think it's going to be Mark Ruffalo, just because of all of the fanfare that he got for that performance. I haven't seen that particular performance, but I heard about it and saw some clips from it. And Mark Ruffalo is another person too who is a really fascinating actor, because he's somebody who's been able to kind of fly by the seat of his pants in terms of his indie cred. He does a lot of he did a lot of smaller. He's in that same movie, You Can Count on Me, I think, that I talked about earlier with Laura Linney. And so he's been in a bunch of different things to that point where you kind of think of, when you see him, you see, oh, that's a guy who's been in so many different things. But then you also kind of don't realize he's also a superstar in terms of playing the Hulk and being in lots of big budget productions, and doing a dual role is always something that gets a lot of cred when it comes to things like award shows. So I think that's probably where it will fall. Yeah.
Perfect. So then we're just going to kind of talk about, of course, the series themselves and what's nominated here. So we have Little Fires Everywhere from Hulu, Mrs. America from FX, Unbelievable on Netflix, and Unorthodox on Netflix. And then, of course, we spoke about a lot earlier, Watchmen on HBO.
This one, there's a couple of different shows. This is one that has a little bit more variety in terms of, like we said, the different kinds of shows going on in this one. But Miss America was something that got a lot of buzz, especially in terms of its political impact and some of the themes it's addressing. So I hear a lot of buzz about that one for limited series. But the other ones too are I haven't seen, but they've had their fair share of fanfare, so to speak. But I would probably go with Miss America too, in terms of taking into consideration some of the different things that we've also been talking about with respect to politics and the way that academies vote and speeches and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Perfect. I just want to add real fast. Professor Wagner, she added that she believes Watchmen is going to be the winner this year for that series, or for that category. But she said it's probably up to her students. From what she's told with her students, that Little Fires Everywhere seems to be the favorite there.
Okay.
So you
wait a second. I was looking at. Was I looking at the right one? Oh, okay. Yeah, I did. Yeah. I was looking at another category on my sheet here too. So I thought.
Oh, no problem. You mentioned a few things earlier about things that you believed were snubbed or deserve a little bit more praise. I know a lot of talk is around Reese Withers, or no, why can I not think of her name right now? Oh gosh, she's in Little Fires Everywhere, and she's also in The Morning Show, and she's also in Big Little Lies, which we didn't talk about today. We didn't get into those categories. Reese Witherspoon. I did.
Reese Witherspoon, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk of her kind of, she was involved in 3 very prominent shows that are being featured in the Emmys, but she didn't get any nominations. How do you have any input on that?
You're always going to get those kinds of things when it comes to award shows. She was nominated for that show, Big Little Lies prior, if I'm not mistaken, right? She's an actress too who's gotten a lot of credit throughout the course of her time as a kind of a big Hollywood star, starring in films like Legally Blonde, I should say. I was gonna say Lethal Weapon, Legally Blonde. So I was teaching that the other day. Legally Blonde and things of that nature. You're always gonna hit that. You're always gonna get shows that don't make it, or people that wind up getting snubbed, and a lot of it has to happen too with politics. And like I said, with the way that these things are voted for too, they're voted for within communities in film and television with respect to the different award shows. And so that kind of thing also has to be taken into account. You never know when certain types of actors are not well liked amongst their peers. And I don't get that that's the sense about her, but you know, oftentimes too, I mean, there's just so many good performances that it doesn't, somebody gets left out. And especially with now the abundance of television that we see, all the different shows. And I mean, for me too, I don't know if you're going to get to this category or not, but I mean, I like a lot of reality TV. I watch a lot of reality TV. And so I've seen actually a lot more of the, of the nominees in the reality TV category than I have some of the other categories. But you know, TV shows and that's one of the, it's kind of a bone of, or a point of contention for me too, which is that in that category, it almost always is the big dogs or the favorites. You almost always see TV shows like The Voice or Top Chef, right? RuPaul's Drag Race, which has been in there, and rightfully so. These are really long-lasting TV shows that have made a really big cultural impact. But there's also a lot of TV shows on networks like, say, MTV, that I think that don't get a lot of credit or a lot of discussion. I mean, I watched, they might be considered trashy, right? But TV shows like X on the Beach, or, you know, I watched DJ Pauly D and Vinny on that show, right? But those TV shows, and even something like Jersey Shore to me is incredibly important, just in the sense that it speaks to younger demographics in a lot of ways. And when I watch those TV shows, I see really vivid representations of what contemporary culture is up to in terms of dating, relationships, and those kinds of things. And so that we don't see something like that in here, I think is problematic in the sense that those kinds of TV shows also have great import in society. And they're actually doing a lot of subversive things when you start to look at some of the things that X on the Beach is doing, for example. X on the Beach is including, it's a dating TV show, and it's including a lot of difference into its narrative. So one of the, in the latest season, they had not just heteronormative couples, but they invited in all sorts of difference into that show. And so you had all sorts of different LGBTQ identities. You had gay couples, lesbian couples, and straight couples. And it was this place where you saw a diverse range of sexuality. And so you're seeing that in a lot of dramas and kind of serious ways, but you're also seeing it in TV shows like that, which I think is making a great cultural impact, because TV shows like that speak really loudly to younger demographics. And so that more and more young people are seeing those kinds of things, or TV shows like even Making the Cut, which I'm a big Project Runway fan. And so once Making the Cut came out on Amazon, I was all over that when it first came out. So, you know, and that TV show as well, the TV shows like Project Runway and Making the Cut are also really celebrating difference in a lot of ways, because in those spaces, those are really diverse spaces. So it's important to take a look at sometimes those TV shows, I think, and get our fix, right? I want to get my fix of trashy TV, but it's also important for us to be able to look at something like that and say, hey, there's a lot of important things going on culturally.
Absolutely. And actually, that was my next question. I was going to say, what's another category you want to highlight? And I'm glad you did that without me asking. Because you bring up a great point there. You know, I think there's a lot of people that try to kind of be purists of TV and, you know, about what's supposed to be good and what's not. When in reality, there's so many different things to offer us. So kind of our last discussion here I just want to have real quick is I just want to talk a little bit about the state of television. Because of course everything's changing. You know, cable was already kind of on a decline before we went into this pandemic here. Now, as everyone's home, we're watching a ton of TV. And then I know a lot of people feel that there's a consensus that there's kind of like an arms race in TV right now with all these networks coming up. You know, Apple has their own now. We have Amazon, HBO, Hulu, Netflix, you know, all the big hitters now. And there's almost like this like competition that seems to be a good thing for all these networks to try to propel themselves to the top here. So I just want to kind of get your input, Professor Wadenius, on kind of the state of TV right now and how you feel.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much TV going on right now that we live in a space too, where in the world in which we live in, we no longer have to go out and seek information, right? Information comes to us. So if I have a question about something, I can simply Google it and I can get that answer at a moment's notice. If I want to get news and information about a particular topic, all I got to do is set an alert on my cell phone, and then that news and information comes to us. And so part of that too in the space of television is that television now can be consumed in so many different ways, whether it be me sitting on a bus watching it on my phone, or accessing it, you know, via the online space, and, you know, with Netflix or places like Amazon, or if I'm sitting at, you know, in my house on television, just flipping through the channels and watching cable or basic network channels. And so that level of kind of multiplicity is a good thing for culture, because we can entertain ourselves in multiple ways. But there also, of course, comes you know, drawbacks to that. The idea that we can entertain ourselves whenever we want to in a multitude of ways, which is to say that we're beset by television at any moment's notice, right? And so the distraction of it, but also the overwhelming nature of it. Television is a really fascinating space too, because it's being played with in terms of form as well. You have the ability now to binge TV shows. So networks will either let episodes go slowly, or they can release a whole series of it, and you can go through it and binge it at your leisure. And these are things that have happened, of course, over the last 20 years or so. But even further back with the attitudes of the 1970s, where you could first tape something with your VCR. The technology is making it more abundant. The technology is making it so it's more widely used. And so what that means is a lot of content. But I think also too, the drawbacks of that are becoming too consumed. Being in a space where there's so much television that you don't get a chance to see everything, right? But also the notion too that if there's too much television, it waters down the experience. We get to a space where perhaps television is getting too specific, right? Because anywhere you go, there's a channel for anybody, right? I can turn on the TV and I can go to networks, I think like Paramount, right? And on Paramount, they have TV shows about like Bar Rescue, where hey, if you're like reality TV shows about fixing things up, you can find Bar Rescue. You can find America's the Home Improvement show that's on Channel 7, right? You can find all sorts of these different kinds of programs, like what's his name? The celebrity chef, Gordon Ramsay. He'll come to your restaurant and fix it up, right? If you're a welder, there's a TV show for you. There's a show called Forged in Fire, right? So if you like golf, there's an entire network for you with the Golf Network. The specificity of it all is great, because we have TV shows that now represent the world in so many different ways. But of course, what also comes with that is the overwhelming nature of the space of television, which is I think something that we have to deal with now in a lot of different ways, not just with TV, but the overwhelming nature of our surroundings, especially now that we're living in a space with a society where we're indoors a lot. So when I first had my Netflix account, it was just the DVDs. And I was like, right when it started, because I'm a film professor, I was like, oh, a service that sends me DVDs. All right, I'm signing up immediately. And so to go from that kind of a space where Netflix was just kind of sending me discs to now being a full-fledged space where there's so much content on there, you couldn't go through it in a couple of weeks. So it's fascinating to see that kind of evolution.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for everything today, Professor Wadenius.
Absolutely.
Everybody, the Emmys are on Sunday on ABC. Tune in to see who wins here, see if we got some predictions right.